Breathwork isn't about being calm. It's about supporting your nervous system to be more dynamic. Hi, I'm Jon. I'm on the faculty at Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, and I've supported over 3,000 plus clients in this breathwork process that I guide to have a more flexible, dynamic nervous system and therefore be more playful and expressive and ultimately successful in your life. So the reason I'm sharing this is because so often in the mindfulness world, concepts around meditation or whatever the practice may be, is the idea that you're supposed to be calm. And then if you sit down to meditate or if you sit down to do breath work, that if you're not calm, something is wrong with you. So here's a very important point. Calmness is a byproduct, but it's not the goal. If you make calmness the goal, it'll be like this metaphor I once heard where if you've got a pool of very choppy water and you want to try to flatten out the water, you take a piece of plywood and start smacking the water to flatten it out. It's obviously not going to make the water less choppy. It's going to make things more choppy. So that's in essence what we're doing to ourselves when we sit down to meditate or do breath work and we try to make ourselves calm. We're adding friction, right? We're adding an energy, an efforting energy, and you can't effort your way to calm. What we can do, especially through breath work, is expand the dynamic range of our nervous system. So in Eastern philosophy, there's this concept that what is rigid is dead. What is fluid and flowing is alive, right? You could picture a tree in a hurricane. So if a tree is nice and flexible, or you could think of your joints, if your joints are super hydrated, you're more flexible. But if this tree is really flexible, a hurricane comes through, the tree can withstand all the movement of the wind. If the tree is super rigid, the wind comes through, poof, knocks it right down. So in a similar way, our nervous system, or one way I like to say it is a healthy nervous system isn't necessarily a calm nervous system, it's a dynamic one. A healthy nervous system isn't necessarily a calm nervous system, it's a dynamic one. And what that means day to day in our lives is that it's not about being calm all the time. It would be ridiculous to think that's even achievable. Even if you were a monk on a mountain, totally secluded, life is still happening. You would still have to get food. You would still probably lose people you love. Like life would still happen, even if you're secluded. So it's not about being calm. It's about being dynamic. So the bottom line here is when we get to breath work, we're working to expand the full range, the full capacity of your nervous system. So that is why I have a whole workshop on this that I guide at Kripalu in different yoga studios and on Zoom. And I have a whole workshop about this. A lot of times you may experience, for instance, a breathwork journey where your breath is accelerated. And when you breathe faster, you start to activate and stimulate your nervous system. And if you're trying to be calm, or if you feel like you have a lot of anxiety or different things going on that your nervous system is overstimulated, you might think, why the hell would I ever stimulate my nervous system through increasing my breathing rate through breath work? Why would I choose to stimulate my nervous system when I'm already overstimulated? And this is a very delicate thing because you don't want to push into those more intensive stimulating practices. That's not it at all. But by exploring the edges, exploring where you have resistance and armor, by coming up to the edges of even fear, where fear lives, causing anxiety in your body, by coming up to the edges without having to push through them, without having to be aggressive about it, just by exploring the edges, you start to create a sense of curiosity, a sense of chosen activation. So rather than pushing into those practices too intensively and getting overwhelmed by it, which will just keep you stuck and at worst re-traumatized, but by activating through choice and exploring the edges with a sense of agency through choice, you start to expand the upper range of your nervous system to explore, to tolerate, to comfortably or groundedly handle activation. And when you practice through choice, Then when life comes around and it throws some stuff at you, you've expanded your capacity through choice. Just like if you train yourself through exercise to become more resilient, then, well, if you have to run from a tiger, your body's in a little better shape. But it's because you approached it piece by piece through chosen activation, chosen stress stimulus. If it's exercise, lifting a little more today than you did yesterday, or running a little further, or running a little faster, not too much faster, not too much further, not too much heavier, but in digestible pieces, you create a stimulus through activation. We do the same thing to our nervous system with breath work when we choose activating patterns to expand our upper range. And then when we come down and we slow things down, which is what we want to spend most of our time doing, breathing slow, down regulating the nervous system, we expand the lower end of the range. So overall, we explore to some degree, to whatever it feels safe and chosen to you in your experience. We explore the upper range of activating breath work to expand the upper range and the stress tolerance, you could say. And then we come back down and we explore the lower range, the down regulation, and our expansion, our nervous system, our capacity becomes more expanded, and our nervous system itself becomes more fluid and dynamic. And we can invite more curiosity and, dare I say, even more playfulness into our life, because we know that if a stressor comes along, all right, we can stay grounded as we deal with this stressor, knowing that when the stressor is dealt with, okay, I've dealt with that. Now I can come back down. We don't just get stuck. Because the last thing I'll say here is, so often in our lives, we experience so much just chronic stress. And it doesn't always have to be super high level. It could just be chronic and even mid-range stress that's just consistent, and our nervous system gets stuck. It's like that tree in the hurricane that's just rigid. A gust of wind comes, poof, blows it right over. Versus when we work with our nervous system through our breath, activating to a certain degree, then calming down, then activating, then calming down. That expansion, that capacity gets wider and wider, so our nervous system becomes more fluid, more flexible, and so when the proverbial hurricane comes around, we can flow with it a little more easily and a little more gracefully, and with more curiosity and even a sense of play, a relationship to play and exploration in our life. Hope this helps, and tune in next week. I post a video every Wednesday, and victory to the light within.